Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Saturday morning at Drink Up, and I got my great friend Tam. And Tam is actually an attorney out of California, so this could be really interesting. This is our second attorney actually to have on Drink Up. Tam, welcome to Drink Up.
Thanks, Sam. It's great
Yeah,
to be here. I'm looking
yeah,
forward to
it's
it.
early. It's early there, right? You got out of, and you said you got up like early just to prepare for this.
I did. I'm a morning person, not a night person, so I wake up early anyway, but yes, I did kick everybody out of the room.
It's
So,
funny because
just
I
so I
don't know
could
if
do this.
you know Andy Poe. You might know Andy.
I think I do.
Space Makers. She's in your area. I met her through we were talking about Marshall. Hello, Marshall, if you're out there. But she was not an early morning person, but she got up early and met with us. So I know it's like 7:15 or 7:30 your time. So
Yeah,
again, welcome
thank you.
to us. We had actually met through networking through a mutual friend, and it's so wonderful to have you here on Drink Up. So how we kind of roll here, we just have coffee and we just chat as we were talking this morning. And we were interested as we were kind of warming up, we were talking about why people get stuck. We'll go back to your journey and everything else, but I wanted to just come back to that conversation. We were talking about like how people have reached out to me and they've lost their job or they stay in their job and they're unhappy. And yeah, you were sharing some things about that too. So I'm just curious what you think about that word stuck and what people should do.
Yeah, I think again, I'm a lawyer and a bit of background. I worked in big law for over 20 years. And I think it's probably true in a lot of professions, but in the law, like tend to set a goal. So in big law, your goal is to be a partner, be an equity partner, work your way up through the system. And sometimes what I saw was people like they didn't want that goal anymore, but they felt like a failure if they didn't achieve it. So that's when you said stuck to me, that's what occurred in my head is, yeah, that's what it means to be stuck. You think this goal, you think you have to achieve the goal or you're a failure. In reality, it's entirely possible your goal just changed and that's okay. That's how
Yeah.
life is.
Yeah. Well, tell us. I just wanted to kind of start there. People on this, like, okay, so why do we have another attorney in a beverage broadcast, right? So I know that you're going to talk about what your firm does and the whole bit, but tell us a little bit about like who you are, how you came to be. You're out of Southern California, I believe,
Hmm.
and what your services are. I'm just curious, and we'll get into it.
Sure. So I am an intellectual property attorney. In the course, I've practiced at two different big law firms, Venable, for anybody who's familiar with it, and DLA Piper. I was a partner at both. I never specialized in a particular area of IP. I was always really fortunate that the clients I was working with had complex IP portfolios and complex IP problems. So I learned and got trained in how different types of IP fit together. And in 2023, I decided I wanted to work with companies that were setting up their foundations and establishing their IP, their brands, whether they were startups or they were just emerging and starting to think about how they fit into a marketplace. I wanted to work with them on those foundations of their IP and help them understand what it is that they had that was valuable and they should invest in and maybe what it is that somebody might tell them they should invest in, but it wasn't really going to get them where they wanted to go with their
Yeah.
business.
Well, so many companies we're talking about this start and they don't have an attorney. Like we started our company and full transparency, we didn't start with an attorney. We just put the plane together, we took it off and we started flying that plane. How many of those type of companies do you run into in brands? Is that normal?
It's entirely normal, but I'll tell you one of the reasons I left Big Law and started my own firm was because what I realized is these companies that were successful were paying me sometimes millions of dollars to sort out a problem that had existed the entire time. And had they just talked to a lawyer when they were smaller, younger, more agile, it could have been fixed. But
That's amazing.
because they never did, because I think a lot of people have this perception that talking to a lawyer is expensive.
Yeah, you read my mind because I was thinking about that. Like, oh, I can't afford you. I mean, like we always talk about, like, what are you going to charge to do this work?
Right. And so I think they just go in with the perception that, especially if you're starting a company, every dollar you spend needs to be meaningful. right? Because you only have so much money when you start out to spend. And so the collective perception in society is that lawyers are expensive and
Yeah,
that
but
you
it's more expensive if I don't have that piece of paper. We were talking about this morning, right?
Mhm.
Like if I don't have protection, you could lose your business. Someone could take your business away. And you talked about the moat. You want to get into like the moat?
Yeah, yeah. So one of my clients actually used this analogy and I liked it and said that what I was doing for them was helping them build a moat around their market share. And once we built the moat, then the conversation changed to could we expand the moat? Could we make the moat around their market share bigger? And the reason why some people might be saying, why is a lawyer talking about market share? And that's because I work in IP. So I work with companies on how they engage with consumers. How do consumers recognize you? By your name, by your logo, by the colors you use. How is it that you're out there establishing your market? And then let me try to see if we can build a moat around it. So it's much harder for people to cut into your market share.
It's amazing. We were talking about Prime too. I don't know if that kind of fits in, right? But that's why we do the warm up, by the way. It gives me stuff to talk about with you.
Yeah, yeah.
But Prime, right? These this is like the hottest brand in the world, and all of a sudden, tell everybody what happened with Prime or what's happening.
So Prime Hydration was at one point fast growing. I don't know if it's the fastest growing beverage company or the fastest growing hydration beverage, but it was fast growing. Then a large beverage company in the United States paired up with Lionel Messi, the international soccer star, and launched a hydration brand. And lo and behold, that hydration brand looks a lot like Prime. Now, and this is everything I know about this is public record because Prime then sued Moss Plus for intellectual
So
property
no
infringements.
attorney-client privileges
There's
being
no
talked
privileges
about.
here. There's no I don't represent either of these companies. There's no secrets here, but I did read through the court pleadings and they do look a lot alike. And what Moss Plus said publicly was, look, we hired designers. We didn't copy you. But there is no denying that they are the very similar color scheme, similar bottle, similar branding strategy there to what Moss Plus had achieved. And so
It's amazing.
the question in the litigation is can Prime actually protect the color scheme, the bottle shape, the strategy that they put behind their branding, which clearly worked because they were fast growing.
It's just funny because we were talking about yesterday about our company, Bev Assets, and I'm like, there's like Beverage Assets, there's Bev Net, there's Bev this. We're a consultancy. We're not really a brand, but we're kind of a brand because people see us, but we can turn really quick our name if we have to or whatever, because it's more about our services. And then also how we do our SEO is a lot. It's really, if you go to like Bev Assets, it actually takes you to liquor sales distribution. It's just kind of I'm not an SEO guy or whatever, but it's interesting. What happens? Let's get into a little bit of the horror story. We talked about. Let's talk about it now. Like if you don't like employ your services, this IP law, what can happen to a brand? Like what can happen? Maybe some examples.
Yeah, so the horror story is if you don't put some thought into whether your brand is clear, so nobody else is using it in the
Yeah.
market for something similar, then you could launch a brand. You could establish a significant number of sales. And then someday you get a cease and desist letter or a complaint or a litigation from a company that actually owns that brand, that name, that logo, or something similar to it.
So I
And
have a
they don't like what
brand.
you're doing.
So there's a brand, it's called Big Ass, and I know the person that owns the right to Big Ass. I'll actually introduce you to Ray. He's in your area. I think he's in San Francisco, but he owns the rights to it. And we were talking about another brand that actually has Big Ass, and it's like a donkey. He goes, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to have my attorneys go send over to this donkey brand of the whole bit because he owns the rights to it.
But when that happens, if the brand doesn't have, let's say you're just emerging, you don't have the funds for that fight. So
Yeah,
then you're making a decision. Do I fight and try to keep the brand that consumers now recognize that I launched with?
yeah.
Or do I rebrand? And in the beverage space, rebranding is an expensive proposition because you have labels. In liquor, you have regulatory hoops you have to
When you
jump
say
through when it came
expensive, give
from
me
it.
a ballpark range like that you've experienced.
I mean, assuming you don't have to pay any kind of penalty to the other company for using it, I mean, I would say it could cost you best case 10,000. That's to hire designers to redesign, and that's assuming you can negotiate a sell through. So, what I try to do when I represent clients in that space is negotiate a resolution that allows them to sell through the inventory that they have.
Yeah, you were telling me that yesterday, like, okay, don't know, you can't produce anymore, sell it and go away.
Correct. And usually there'll be a date by which they have to sell. So, the pressure's a little bit on them to make sure they sell through that inventory by that date. But that's your best case scenario. Sometimes other parties won't agree to a sell through. And then you're in a position of relabeling inventory you already have.
Is it better to have someone like you on retainer? I'm a brand, I've come out with it. Is it good to have like an IP attorney like on speed dial, or is it better to like call you when I need you?
Yeah. So I would say my advice to a company would be have a lawyer that you trust that
Yeah.
isn't that doesn't make you feel like every time you pick up the phone, they're charging you $1,000.
I got to,
Find that lawyer.
oh my God.
Focus less on what they do, but find that lawyer because
I got to share a story with you in a minute, but keep on going.
because because sometimes when you have a business, you just need to pick up the phone and call somebody and say, "Is this even an issue?
Oh my gosh, just
Is
pick up
this
the
even an
phone.
issue?"
Yes.
And you need somebody, and lawyers are pretty trained to say like, it's an issue and you need Tammany, or it's an issue and you need Roger, or it's an
Well,
issue and you need this person.
I'm so glad I know you and Roger, by the way, because we got this thing. So I'm going to be calling you, right? So I'll
Yes.
send you whiskey in the mail. But anyway, whatever. You just tell
I
me
love
hours up
whiskey.
front.
I'll take it.
But anyway, so we got this like it was a mutual NDA. All these mutual NDAs are running everywhere, right? So I'm like reading the thing. I'm like, I have no idea. I'm dumping it into the chat, saying, is there any risk here or whatever, asking questions. And then I finally just said, hey, Roger, can you take a look at it? And because
Yeah.
he's my friend, he did that.
Yeah.
He's like, you have nothing to worry about. There's like really, I mean, typical, I'm sorry to put you in that lump, but he was very like, he called out the risk, but he's like, it's minimal risk. But there's always risk in anything. I think an attorney's always going to see the gray area, the risk, the whole bit. But it's good to be able to pick up the phone and talk to someone like you have that relationship, right?
And the thing that at least my clients understand is they can pick up the phone and ask me the question. And if
Yeah.
it is something that I'm like, look, this is
Yeah.
an issue, I'm gonna have to look into it.
Hmm.
They know I'll say to them, give me an hour. And then in their mind, then they know like this is a quantifiable expense. And sometimes my clients will say to me, nah, I'm just gonna roll with it. I know it's an issue, but I run a business and I take risk every day. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
but I
roll with
can't, yeah, Tam, I can't afford you. I'm a new brand. I gotta get to production. I gotta pay Sam to go get distribution. I mean, you're not affordable.
it. So I actually think that that's not true because
I'm being facetious, by the way.
yeah, no, but I appreciate it because I think people need to understand number one, I work with a company. I offer like various types of billing. So a company could say to me, I just need you to be a quantifiable expense every month. I need to know
Yeah,
what I need to know what it is. I have this much every month. This is what I want to spend every month. And I could say to them, okay, let's do that deal. We'll do that deal. We'll do it 3 months. We'll do it 6 months. You pay me a flat rate every month. Then sunk cost, call me whenever you want.
yeah,
I do that sometimes for clients. But I also say to clients, like, if you call me and say, is this an issue? I'm not charging you for that question because
yeah,
I'm trying to add value to your business. When you get
yeah,
my bills, I want you to know that you got something for that.
yeah.
And to me, it's more long term, right? I want to be there for your brand when you have legit legal issues that I do need to charge you for. And I don't
Right.
want you to be scared to call me.
Well, that is just interesting because we were looking exploring like doing a trademark. We talked about that yesterday too. We're not going to go down that path right now, but and Roger put us in contact with some of his trademark people, and we got like the costs associated with it. And then it's funny, my co-host who's not here, Adam, if you're out there, Adam Smith, sorry you're not here. He apologizes, but he put me in contact with UJ, and UJ she was very clear. She goes, we charge $4.95 an hour. This project's going to be probably a 10-hour project, but it's probably going to be more like two. But she told me the worst case scenario, because I guess you have to go through, and I guess they're saying you can inevitably hit a roadblock or whatever. So she's like, I can't give you, we don't quote a total price. I can just give you an hourly price, and I can tell you the max and the minimum. Is that kind of atypical?
It's not atypical.
Yeah.
Some of what I do is flat
Yeah.
rated. So if
Okay.
you came to me and said, I want to trademark this,
Yeah.
I would walk you through what that looks like. And then
Yeah.
the process of getting that on file with the government, I do at a flat rate.
Okay.
So you know this is what it's going to cost you to get the application on file.
Okay.
What, like if you get an office action, certain things I would charge by the hour on. But
Yeah.
the nice thing about it is that if those things happen, I can go to the client and more accurately say, here's the amount of work I would have to do if you want to continue to pursue this, and here's what it would cost.
Yeah. Is it true yesterday? I think you told me this yesterday. I don't think I dreamt this, that you founded your firm because you wanted to help entrepreneurs. Is that a true statement?
That is a true statement. Yes.
And why is that? Why do you want to help entrepreneurs? What were you seeing in the corporate law? I guess that's what your corporate law, or the big law firms
Yeah.
versus, hey, would I refer you to as an independent, like your
Yeah, or
own?
solo.
Yeah. So what?
So because what I was seeing was companies that I very much that were very successful, that I very much believed in. And they were working with me because they had a problem that they should have never had. Right? Was a flaw in their IP strategy. There was a flaw in their IP. They didn't register something they should have, but they were paying me a lot of money, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to
Wow.
deal with this issue now. When and what I recognized was if they had just asked me when they started out,
Yeah.
we could have been avoided it altogether, or at least been in a much better position than we were. And I realized, like, 20 years of experience in the law is a lot,
Yeah.
and that my experience was better used at the foundational stages of a company
Yeah.
at this point than it was after they were selling hundreds of millions on the market.
Yeah, it's almost like I mean, that's a lot of money to lose, you know? It seems like everybody kind of transition off that. So thanks for sharing that. Everybody I talk to, the goal is to sell. They wanna test it, build it, scale it, and sell it. That's kind of, I still done that. I'm gonna test it, I'm gonna build it, I'm gonna scale it, I'm gonna sell it. And it's like they all want to 10x it, and everybody on LinkedIn is like, I've 10x'd it, I'm a gazillionaire and I'm only 25 years old.
Yep.
So kind of talk about that. How do you help, and where do you fit in that process? Every facet of it, the beginning of it, the middle of it, the end of it?
So I do every facet of it, but here's what I
Okay.
say to people whose goal is to sell, because I don't think people think of it like this, and they should. If your goal is to build it and sell it, it is even more important that you have an IP attorney build that moat. Because if your goal is to sell it, you're selling the brand. You're probably at that point not selling a formulation. You're at that point not selling yourself because you don't want to do it. You are selling the brand and the goodwill that you have built around it on the
Mhm.
market. If you didn't protect it, nobody's going to pay you 10x for that.
Right, because they're gonna go to I hear this term cap table, and maybe we can explain
Oh,
that a little bit, but everybody goes to
yeah.
the cap table. So when you go to this table, people like you are there, right? These attorneys, these finance people, and they're all like finding problems. Like you might say, hey, my company's worth 40 million, but all of a sudden an attorney comes in, well, you had this problem back 5 years ago. I've heard this. Now it's only worth 35 million. And then Joe, the finance guy, shows up. Yeah, you had this other problem, this divorce that happened or whatever. You lost like 8 million. So now it's worth 22. Is that like happen in the
It
process?
does, and I do some of that work. My lane is the IP lane, so I wouldn't necessarily be looking at the cap table,
Yeah.
but I would be looking at a company's IP, and I would be saying things like, they don't have a registered trademark for this, or they don't, there's somebody else who has this registered trademark. They're never going to own it. So how
Yeah.
much do you really want to invest in a brand you're never going to own?
That's amazing. So so many people don't cross their T's and dot their I's when it comes to setting up a business or a brand or the IP.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is, and part of what I do is helping these founders understand the strategy. So when people come to me, I give them options. Here's your option. And one of those options, and this comes up in beverage a lot, and people don't think through this, is trade dress. Trade dress comes up a lot in beverages.
What is
You
trade dress?
So trade dress is how consumers recognize your brand, but it's things other than the name or the logo. Could be a color, could be a bottle shape, could be some unique way that they interact with you online. Whatever it is that is your unique approach to consumers could be trade dress. But trade dress is hard to protect. So you have to have a strategy about how you're going to do it. But if you can do it, it can be very powerful. So like in going back to the Prime hydration case, one
Hmm.
of their claims is trade dress, and their claim that their trade dress is the fact that the bottle cap matches the color of the bottle.
Interesting. Well, here's a
Imagine if
can
they
right
could
here. It's
protect
like,
that.
do you see this?
Yeah,
Like that would be an example of trade dress because it's all about. Matter of fact, all their like point of someone he wears like shirts and stuff. The founder of Derek sees this. Like it'll be like it fits like it's everything's around what they do with this can.
that's exactly right. So the can itself wouldn't be trade dress because there's lots of cans,
Right.
but other aspects of that, the fact that it says, the name Longwise like that could be on a black can with a red stripe on the top I can't read what it says, but there's some red writing on the top. So those things, yeah, exactly. Rose no,
So,
cause no. Okay. So like that's what trade dress is. So in the beverage space, brands should be thinking about that because yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because what happened with Prime is that they started coming out with bottles where the caps didn't match the bottom,
yeah.
and that's being used against them now. But that kind of strategy is how you add value. So if you want to sell a business, to circle back to the main topic, if you want to sell a business, being able to go to the purchaser and say, I have an IP strategy, I have a moat.
Yeah.
You want in on this deal? You got to pay me.
Yeah, so a couple questions coming in. Thank you.
Yeah.
So first of all, my business partner Alicia Vargo says hello, glorious morning. Hello, Alicia. And then Jeff, my friend Jeff from Brand Artica, they've been on. He says trade dress is really important. I learned about this with Van. I'm going to butcher this. Jeff Van Leeuwen ice cream suing Rebel ice cream for
Yeah.
packaging design similarities.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. And in the beverage space, it's so important because consumers are looking at your can and making a split decision. So your can looking different from your competitor is a big deal.
It's amazing, but we don't. None of us actually think about that when we go through the process. Like here's another one. It's like a standard bottle, but this is like the label and how they do it. I'm sure they figured out
Yeah.
with it. Of course, you can see I love all my little bottles, bringing them up and stuff. So,
The
talk
classic example is when Coca-Cola came out with that shaped bottle. I mean, maybe it was the 80s, but they came out with the plastic bottle and it had a unique shape. And
right.
Coca-Cola has the trade dress on that shape of plastic bottle.
Amazing. Let's go back to the moat a little bit. What are so we talked about trade dress. Maybe go back to intellectual property. What is intellectual property? Can you just give an example? Like we didn't really talk about that. Maybe some people don't know what that is. I was thinking, does he sell real estate? but no,
So it's,
for real, what is intellectual property?
yeah.
What does that mean?
So it's valuable but intangible. So unlike real estate, it's not usually tangible. So it could be a copyright, which can be many things, but usually is a design in the beverage space. A copyright might be, again, how you engage with customers on your website, could be a unique drawing on your label, could be artwork that you use throughout your marketing. Trademarks, of course, are your logo, your name. Trade dress is what you look like out on the market.
Okay.
Some beverages might have patents, which could protect formulations in the beverage sometimes.
So it touches a lot of different aspects of a brand. Do you have to be a brand to have intellectual property, or can you be something else?
Every single company that that makes money has some intellectual property,
Got
whether
it.
it's their company name or it's their intellect, it's what they sell. If you're out there doing business, you have some intellectual property.
Got it. It's good. Well, thanks for the definition of that. Let me transition to another topic. You're a founder,
Mhm.
and it takes a lot of guts to go off on your own. What's been your I'm have about a follow-up question, but what has been the hardest thing you've gone through starting this? You weren't an instant success overnight doing your firm.
No, not at all. But honestly, the hardest part was making the decision to do it. Fortunately, once I made the decision, there were a lot of people that I could engage with, take to lunch, pick their brains, get information. So I didn't feel like I was starting from nothing. And all of those people were very gracious in helping me out. And so I had people I could ask questions of. But the decision to leave an equity partnership that is one of the biggest in the country and go by myself
Yeah,
was
that's
the
that's
hardest part.
amazing. So for me, I didn't start my business until I had to.
Mhm.
Full transparency. I mean, I was comfortable until I wasn't comfortable anymore. And I had to make the decision either put food on the table or not food on the table. So for you, it sounds like you weren't the same experience as me, but you had that, you said, you want to go help people. There was a different why. What, like, so you had a why, obviously, to go do this. So what is your business why of like the why? What is your why?
Just felt like I had done a lot working in big law and learned a lot, and I wanted to do something better with what I knew how to do. I wanted to help companies at the outset so they didn't have giant problems when they were successful. It seemed like a better use of my time, frankly.
Yeah, and you said that early on is like, rather than losing the millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars, I can help you now. So
Right.
how do you get your message out to people? How do people how do they find TAM and IP law in California?
So strangely enough, I do TikToks a lot about this issue. And so, well, I should say not a lot for a TikToker, but a lot for a lawyer. I do a lot for a lawyer on TikTok. I'm on LinkedIn and share some of this information on LinkedIn. And I have a website, caipLawyer.com. And that's how I get out there. But a lot of it is word of mouth, right? A lot
Yeah.
of it is people like Marshall saying, you should meet my friend Sam. You guys would have a great conversation.
Yeah, that's what we've found is like we have kind of top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel stuff. So kind of top of funnel is like, okay, being on LinkedIn, here we are, we're familiar, but really where the real bottom of the funnel comes is Marshall introducing me to you. Share me a story how that's happened for you, and I'll share you one as well. But where like someone like referred, like how does that work? Like so, Marshall introduced you to someone. How does that move into like doing business together? What does that look like?
So I'll give you, it, you like everything, it's an introduction, then do a call with whoever the potential client is to talk through their issue and see if it's something I can help with. There's not a charge for that call. It's literally like is it in my wheelhouse? Can I help you? Can I add value to your issue? And then do you want to engage me? And if it moves forward, then in my space, it usually moves forward pretty quickly
Yeah.
because they have an issue they need to address. So we usually do that within a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Recently, though, I had a new client. They have a rebranding issue. We were able to get them through that issue really quickly. And then lo and behold, they turned around and referred me to somebody else who had a similar issue that they had been talking to. And it's following very much the same trajectory.
Yeah. It's funny. So for me, earlier this week we met friend Phil, who introduced me from Brett, who's with Beyond Spirits, and Brett does some marketing. And we finally took this meeting, and Phil does Mex Direct or whatever. So he's doing some tequilas. So kind of the week progresses, right? So we had a nice conversation. This is what we do. This is what you do. So I leave that conversation, and one of my clients, Ann, who owns a product called Art and Rev, are part of a distillery here called Earl Giles. And I think I could share this, but anyway, they were looking for some tequila, right? And their tequila from the border was getting held up. I'm like, gosh, I just talked to Phil from Max Direct. I'm like, okay, Ann, I'm going to connect you to Phil. All of a sudden, so Phil, myself, Phil's partner, Jorge, we're on the line, and Jorge's like, "Yep, I know exactly what your problem is. You've been hung up the border since April, but we know how to push it through." But because I took the meeting and had the discussion, I was able to pull Phil out of my value that I could bring to my client. I get nothing for other than my client's happy. And if my client's happy, they're more apt to do business with what I do a whole
Yeah,
bit. So that's how
exactly.
my world works.
Yeah. It's very similar. I think the only difference is for when I do take that phone call with somebody to see what their issue is and if I can help, that's a privileged conversation. So those aren't conversations that I typically have with other referral source or anything like that. It's usually a one-on-one conversation just because I like to get in those conversations, get into a little bit of like how I would approach the issue, which is technically legal advice.
Yeah. But as I'm getting to know you, I mean, naturally, if someone says, "Hey, I need help with IP," first I'm like,
Mhm.
"Hey, you got to meet Tam." Another
Yeah.
example is that a young man, which I need to introduce you to, but Dejour. Dejour, if you're out there listening, Dejour's out in New York. He's coming out with a brand. And we initially met through circles or LinkedIn or whatever, right? And so Dejour's bringing a brand up. And he started out with a different co-packer. I'm like, wait, wait, wait. Let me see the contract. What are you doing? Don't sign it. My friends at Earl Giles, and I moved him over there, and it was a better price. They're more on, and I'm saying they're honest, but I felt more comfortable with him. He felt comfortable with him, and I connected that way. So that's how the kind of the net. So you lose a lot. You built your business is through networking. You built your business through your network
Yes.
at the end of the day. Jeff has another question or statement. So thanks, Jeff, from Brandartica again. Also, would be good for people to understand that a trademark registered with a state is vastly different protection from registering with the USPTO and Pacific classes. Can you explain how these differ?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks, Jeff, for bringing that up. So, when you register a trademark with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, the USPTO, you get national rights to that. It is presumed that you own it nationally, that you use it nationally, and that you have national rights to that. If you register a trademark in California, you're only getting rights to it in California.
Interesting.
And trademark rights are regional. So if you don't register it at all, you only have rights to where you used it first. So if I launch in Southern California and I never register my trademark, and somebody in New York comes up with a brand and they use it and they're second and I'm first, I still only have rights to that trademark regionally. So Southern California where I sold it, maybe I shipped regularly to Colorado and then you might have some rights there, but you won't have national rights for sure unless you actually register it with the USPTO. Most brands have no problem with registering it with the USPTO if you have a clear mark and you're using it and all of that. But the cannabis space has changed things a little bit because you still can't get a federal trademark on a cannabis product.
Yeah, yeah.
So cannabis is a different strategy because you have to use the states to do that. But for everybody else, they should just be registering federally. You should make sure it's clear and you should register it federally. It's a much more streamlined, easier, less expensive process.
Wow. Hey, Jeff, does that answer your question? If you're out there listening, we're a bit delayed. So if you come in, please answer, but I'll introduce you to Jeff as well. I'll probably bring you into my, it drives everybody nuts. I think I have like 40 people now in I do like every Saturday. I'm like, hey, please come join us on Drink Up. So there's like 40 people, but I'm like, and I'll probably say, by the way, all y'all could probably communicate and say hello to each other. And maybe there's a network opportunity for y'all to do some work
That's
together or
right.
whatever, or make new friends. But anyway, I always ask people to try to join in and get some questions. It makes it more fun. People come from different spaces. Jeff works with a lot of beverage brands. They're an agency, so I'm sure that as they get to know you, they probably will be reaching out. They have a podcast as well, Tam, the whole bit. So definitely.
And I
And
love the
he says
question.
yes. He says yes. Great info.
Good.
So I want to go down a path of ask everybody that comes on Drink Up. I usually ask it beginning, middle, or end. I'm going to ask around kind of the middle. But what's the difference between success and failure?
So at the stage I'm at, I would say success is doing the type of work that I want to do. Failure is feeling like I have to do something I don't want to do just to make ends meet and pay the bills.
I love that because we are talking about being stuck, right? and I was stuck for 57 years of my 57 years of my life. So I guess I've been in it for 40. So at that time, I was like 37. But I just stayed because I was comfortable. I stayed because I was scared. I stayed because I didn't think I could go do it, right?
Hmm.
So I was failing, quite frankly, myself. I wasn't a failure, but I was failing myself of
Yeah.
pursuing my dreams. And again, I think most people, like for you, you're very unique. I think if everybody was an entrepreneur, everybody would be doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like I had to do it, but I had to become an entrepreneur because I had to, right? Now, if I could tell my younger self, like, hey, this isn't that bad. But the difference for me for success and failure is pursuing what you want to do, right? But two is not giving up. You got to stay in the fight. I mean, I'm assuming that, I mean, you have days that are tough.
Yeah. And days where you're like, is this even going to work? Right? Am I actually going to have clients next week? Not because things go bad, but just because when you're an entrepreneur, like what I realized pretty quickly is it's really hard to predict how it's going to go. It really is. Like you could have data behind it. I had gathered lots of conversations with people who had done the same thing I had done and started their own firms.
Yeah.
But you don't really know how it's going to go or until you do it. So like the first year of my firm, I had set a goal for revenue. What I didn't realize is that I wasn't going to take all of that revenue as income.
Yeah.
That a lot of it was going to be costs of running the business, costs that
Yeah.
I did not anticipate. I had in my head what I thought it would cost. It cost a lot more than I thought it would cost.
Yeah.
So I ended up taking a lot less in the first year than I thought I was going to take.
Yeah.
And that was a shift in my mindset in how I should set the goals for the company, right? It wasn't just about revenue at the end of the day. I had to actually like refine it a little bit in order to
Yeah.
make it work.
But you had to hit go. You started. I talk to so many people like, okay, we got to do this step and this step and that step. I'm like, look, man, just get on the high dive and jump in and you'll figure it out as you go because you're overthinking every aspect of it. And you don't know what each day is going to bring. I mean, I swear yesterday, it started out, this one client wanted our information about our, what we talked about earlier, but our
Hmm.
professional liability insurance or certificate. And then there was another client that like, hey, I thought we were going to pay in July, right? So like my partner are talking. Meanwhile, she's going through a difficult time, saying, hey, Alicia, prayers for you and your family. Whole bit, I love you. But the point is so she's going through that. We're getting these emails. You know what? At the end of the day, it all worked out. It just did. My feedback is if you're a brand, I'd love to get back into beverage brands here a little bit. But if you're a brand and you're going through a difficult time, don't let the morning run the afternoon. Just work through it. It's going to be okay. The sun's going to shine. It's going to solve itself or you're going to solve it at the
You'll
end of the day.
figure it
Just like,
out.
yeah, you'll figure it out, right? Like you had this revenue goal in mind. Maybe it wasn't where you wanted to be, but you figured out along the way kind of how to get there, right?
Right.
And the whole bit. So back to beverages, kind of the last 15 minutes or so. Just want to, like, what things would you want to share with beverage brands out there? Some things that they need to be aware of, and circles in terms of I'm a new brand, I'm coming to market. Where are the landmines and where are the opportunities?
I think the opportunity, I'll take the opportunity second. The opportunity is to put some strategy behind your branding and not in just marketing strategy, but IP strategy, because it can really pay off for you if you want to sell
Yeah,
the brand. It could
yeah,
pay off for you when you are highly successful, like Prime Hydration. But if you do it smart, it can pay off for you. I'd say landmines. I'm a lawyer in California. I do work with my clients on advertising issues. The
yeah,
landmines I see are always advertising issues. It's always, somebody told them they could say something on the label that gets them in trouble, or, they saw everybody saying it, so they said it. And then when they're successful, then they're in trouble for saying it on the label. So to avoid the landmine, I would say you can find a consultant to review your label before you go to market, and it is well worth the money.
yeah. I mean, it's like I sold insurance for a living. I've done that for many years, and no one wants to talk to an insurance salesman
Mm-mm.
until they need to. And the problem is when you want to talk to me when you need me, I can't help you. It's kind of when you talk
That's
about like you have clients that had millions of dollars. Like I'm like, look, I can't help you with your family. I can't help you with your faith, but I can help you with your finances. And how I help you with your finances, I can give you protection. But if you go break your leg and you say, hey, I need medical insurance now, they're not going to write you. I can't write you. Just like you're an attorney, I need help with my P. I can probably write you or help you, but it's going to cost you $1 million versus it could have just cost you 10,000 at the beginning, right? Does that, I don't know if that ties together, but that's been my
No,
experience.
it does. Like it even could cost you less than 10,000, right? It's
Yeah.
just it, California is for all these beverage brands. Anybody who sells in California understands this. It's like a joke sometimes how tricky these consumer protection statutes are and how easy it is for these plaintiffs' lawyers to catch somebody who got tripped up.
It's
And it's like it's crazy because it's like paying a tax then for like distributing in California, which is terrible. But that's the biggest pitfall I see for beverage companies because it is like a landmine. And the second
yeah.
you get any traction, you're getting a letter or I mean, Prop 65 too. So, like, Prop 65 has a whole thing about putting notices online now that tripped up one of my clients, somebody who was pretty sophisticated at Prop 65. And so that too, I think for if you're distributing a beverage, I mean, just spending a little bit of money on the front end to have somebody make sure you're dotting all those I's and crossing all those T's is going to go a long way.
Man, Adam, I'd love to be here. Adam, if you're watching this or listening to us, you missed a good one, brother. Because he's like, so he'll talk about like the ingredients in the can, and there's a lot of stuff. And I'm gonna maybe you know all this, but I guess there's a lot of challenges about what's in the can, not in the can, the whole bit that people can get sued or get hung up on in terms of what they promise, like vitamin B12 to caffeine. You want to go down that path a little bit? Do you know anything what I'm talking about?
So yes, I don't know specifically the cases on vitamin D or caffeine, but generally speaking, if you make a statement on your label and somebody tests your product and could even argue that that statement was misleading, you're going to be in trouble at least in California, probably also New York and maybe Illinois.
It's interesting. Eric Martindale just joined, and he said an ounce of prevention comes to mind. So Eric actually, and Eric, if you can chime in here, but Eric actually helps from a e-commerce standpoint. A brand comes to market, he can actually bring it for e-commerce, and he actually can drive traffic to the store or to the e-commerce site through like Uber Eats. But so he can drive those drivers into particular locations. He does that, and I'm sure Eric, you do a lot more than that. So I probably butchered that, but anyway, he had a comment to that as well.
I think that that's true. I just think what happens with brands when they're young is they see other people on the market saying it, so they think they can say it, and they don't really realize the risk that the other company might be engaging in.
What's your promise, right? So, in the campus space, it's really interesting. One of our founders, I'll remain nameless, but they had an issue where, which actually the milligrams of the hemp Delta 9 in the can
Mhm.
wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I often wonder, it's like 25 milligrams, 5 milligrams. Do you really know unless you have like something to test it to say it's really there, right?
Yeah.
How do you know?
I mean, in the cases I have had, it's the manufacturer or the co-man that has
Yeah.
told the company, here's going to be the end result. And they
Yeah.
may have some regular testing to back that up. But then what happens sometimes is I've had companies change co-mans, but they don't change the label.
It's
And so
interesting.
that's where things start to get kind of disconnected. So they continue to run with a label that might no longer be accurate because they've changed co-mans now.
Yeah, so that's where you could come in too to help them with that as well to make sure you got everything soup to nuts. So actually, Marshall says you have the best guest. So Marshall says hello.
Thanks, Marshall.
And then Jeff talks about how so Eric Martindale makes a pizza, by the way. You'll meet all
Uh-huh.
these folks because I'm going to put you on my Drink Up podcast. Like, oh, who are these people? But it's people you want to meet, by the way. But
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Eric makes a pizza and he does a pizza post and he does a beef post. Eric, I don't know when your posts are Thursdays or Tuesdays, but he always posts a pizza. But his pizzas are fantastic. But he's like a protein guy. He's all about protein. But he's figured out how to make protein pizza, I believe. Again, probably butchering it. But all these people need your services, by the way, how to make a pizza or how to do the proper post.
I need the protein pizza. So that would be, yeah, we can exchange some information.
Yeah. So Eric Martindale, did you hear that? We need the protein pizza coming in. All right. So, kind of the last minute, kind of what do you want to leave everybody with in terms of, we've had this conversation today. Thank you so much. It's been delightful, by the way. But what do you like? What do you like? If you were going to leave a couple things with some folks, what would that be?
First and foremost, it would be don't be afraid to ask a lawyer.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. It can be me. It can be another lawyer. Just don't be afraid to ask the question and see if it's something that is an issue or not an issue.
Yeah.
That's step one.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
second thing I would say is if I were to ask you what's your strategy behind your branding for your beverage brand and you can't answer that question, then you need to have a conversation with an IP attorney, especially if you think you're going to want to sell the
Yeah.
company down the road.
Because you're going to talk about how we build the moat,
Correct, because you need to know,
right?
how did you build the moat? Because honestly, if you put yourselves in the shoes of somebody who's going to pay millions of dollars for a brand, think about how much more motivated they're going to be when you walk into that meeting and you say, here's how I did it.
Yeah.
Here's how I did it. Here's the strategy behind it. Here's all of the valuable things I'm going to hand over to you so you can expand it.
I love the moat. We'll do a little clip of that about the moat and how you build
Yeah,
that moat. And if you don't have a moat, you're unprepared. If you're unprepared,
correct.
you're setting yourself up for risk.
Correct.
Yeah. So do you have a moat success story that you can share?
That's it. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, do I have one that I can share that's public, really? I don't know that I do. Um,
You do, but you
Because I
can't
don't know that
share.
I have one that's public that I can share, because I don't wanna share a client's strategy without their permission on
Yeah.
how we build it.
Yeah. We sign like our mutual NDAs and stuff. We can't share a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
but what I can tell you, I'll tell you this one, because I think that this was a challenging one, and it wasn't a beverage brand, it was a fashion
Yeah.
brand. But what we were fashion brand with very limited resources. So technically speaking, I would have liked to go get design patents on certain aspects of what this fashion brand was doing, but we couldn't afford that. So we bootstrapped it with less expensive copyrights and trademarks in order to try to build their moat. And so far, knock on wood, the moat has succeeded in getting knockoffs off the market.
That's interesting.
So that's one I would call a success story. Obviously, fashion is getting hit hard because of some of what's going on with tariffs and getting things out of China and all of that. So I wish her business was in a better place to be what I would consider a success story. But from an IP perspective, we have been getting knockoffs off the market, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, I think the best money, as I've gotten to know a couple of my attorney friends, is the best money that you could ever spend is to hire an attorney. Can you share your fees, or is that just
Sure.
based on the opportunity?
No, so if I charge hourly, it's $5.25 an hour, which, to put it in context, when I was at my last law firm, I charged $1,200 an hour. So my lack of overhead now that I don't have a large firm is been passed on to my client.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah, so that for somebody with my expertise, that's a pretty good rate. The flat fees vary depending on what we're filing, but they're pretty commensurate with what flat fees other firms would charge.
okay.
But I would tell everybody, if you have a lawyer and you feel like you can't call that lawyer because they're going to charge you so much money, you should get a different lawyer.
That's
There's
so true.
lots. If you feel like they're nickeling and diming you, then just get another lawyer. There's lots of lawyers.
Yeah, develop a friendship at
Yeah.
least. Like my dad, this is a story I was going to tell you early on, but I'll just tell you. So he had a friend, guess, supposed friend, and he asked him some advice, but it was just a conversation. And then lo and behold, like this was back in like the early '80s, a $300 bill like arrived on his in the mail. I got to think that's like just be upfront. Like, hey, if we're gonna have this conversation, let's go further. This is what my rate is. Happy to give you some general feedback. But at some point, I mean, like we face that too. Like I can't tell you how many people like get us on a phone call and we're talking, but at some point it's like, look, okay, I want to help you with commercial
Mhm.
strategy, but if I do the whole strategy right here, then you got everything you need. You don't need me.
Right. 100%.
So
Well,
I
you
think there
don't
has,
charge them for the initial, like, I don't charge them for the phone call where I say, okay, here's, if you want me to deal with this, here's what I got to do. And here's
yeah,
probably how much time it will take me.
yeah. Like I did a whole like, so we'll benchmark brands and we do like based on population, we'll index based on to do forecasting. I can do that in my sleep, quite frankly, with all the tools I have now. So I'll give that one away for free because I know there's a lot more to route to market, right? There's like, distributors, pass-throughs, brokers, customers. There's a whole lot more in the mix, different channels you go to, the whole bit. So if I have to do indexing, we'll do it all day. Like, that's value that they get. And they're like, okay, these people know what they're doing. So we'll do that as well, which I think on the same standpoint. Well, thank you so much for today. I'll ask you to remain on the line. Thank you, Jeff, Marshall, Eric, Alicia, the people that you can't see. They joined us in the chat today on my chat. So thanks for joining Tam. And I definitely will connect all of you to her. She'll actually be in our Drink Up podcast, Drive You All Nuts. Again,
I'm excited.
Sam's like, come join the podcast. So I'm going to try to put everybody's been on the podcast in that chat on LinkedIn. So I hope everybody likes it because it's people that are like us are trying to bring value to the beverage industry. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Sam. I really enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah, good. All right. I'm going to hit stop. Happy Saturday, everybody.